Hello and welcome to the Night Watch Conspiracy Theory Edition. So today I would like to discuss with you a topic, and it is not something that I am saying is factual or that I am saying that I believe is the case. It is simply a discussion on a big what if, and just connecting dots and looking at what's been happening in the world and running various scenarios. I've thought of a scenario that one could say makes sense. At the same time, please understand this is just a what if, it's not a statement of fact. But there are some statement of facts that I'll begin with. First of all, lately I've noticed that all of my electronic and computer type devices and streaming that I use are behaving a bit strange. They're running slow, my computer's running unusually slow, it's tied up a lot, streaming is delayed, internet is delayed. But not only that, I have a lot of strange computer freezes, cell phone freezes, iPhone freezes. iPhone stops responding, won't turn off. Eventually it does. Just a lot of random things like that, but they seem to be escalating. And it made me think about this a little bit. So here's what we do know. It looks as though it's pretty convincing and clear that the novel coronavirus did in fact begin in Wuhan, China. Now, some believe it began at the wet market in Wuhan. Others believe that it began at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which seems to make quite a bit of sense. The United States seem to believe that is the case, and others seem to believe that as well. In any case, there is an advanced virology lab in Wuhan, very close to the wet market. So in any case, it's quite plausible that the virus did in fact begin at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So I think we have that much out there that you can confirm fairly objectively. So that's one element of this. Now the question then becomes, assuming it was leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, was that by accident? Was that by some form of sabotage? If so, by who? Or was it intentional? Now when considering that, something to consider further is if it were intentional, would it make sense to release it on or around the Chinese New Year? I find the timing to be so incredibly suspicious, really. When you think about it, I don't really believe personally in coincidences of large scale such as this, large global scale. Is it really coincidental that the novel coronavirus leaked from Wuhan, China, right pretty much in the center of the Chinese New Year? So whether it was sabotage or intentional, I find that to be quite hard to ignore that fact. Now, in my opinion, that kind of shoots down the accidental argument, and I would lean a little more towards sabotage or intentional. So let's just say for a moment that it was intentional, and this is just an assumption that we're making for the sake of discussion. It's not something that I have proof of, and it's not something that I am saying is the case. It's a what if. What if China released it intentionally on the Chinese New Year in that range of time? Okay, so if that were the case, a few things would have to happen so that they would not appear guilty. Number one, China would have to suffer also. China would have to experience lots of cases, lots of fatalities, and also pain in their economy, which they have. However, they wouldn't fare as badly as others, but they would definitely suffer as they have. Others, such as America, would suffer quite a bit more, as has been the case, it seems. China's bounced back quicker. China's had fewer cases, fewer fatalities, seems to have been able to manage it better. Their economy seems to be returning more towards normal faster. And not only that, but it appears to me that those aligned most closely with China have also experienced lower fatality rates. And although the cases do spread, they seem to have it controlled far better than those that are not aligned with China. Now, I haven't gone through each country line by line and compared it all, but I just have noticed a trend that any of you could dig in on your own objectively and research a little bit. But if you look at countries not aligned with China, and you look at their number of cases and their number of fatalities, and you look at those who are aligned with China, and you look at the data, I find it a bit concerning in what I see personally. And without mentioning certain countries, I don't want to get into too deep into this direction of pointing fingers, but just something to consider is assuming that those most closely aligned with China have experienced similar results in terms of controlling the virus and controlling fatalities as China has experienced. That's also quite suspicious. And those not most closely aligned with China have experienced far more severe outcomes. So let's consider that. Now, there are cases where countries that have managed it extremely well that are not aligned with China have come out ahead. Not ahead in terms of any type of win by any means, but they've managed it effectively. They've had fewer fatalities, for example. They've controlled the spread of the virus effectively. So there are countries not aligned with China that have done quite well versus others. But overall, we're talking about just a trend. Are those aligned with China faring better overall in terms of fatalities, meaning that do they have access to a higher level of treatment than countries not aligned with China, and therefore their data is more favorable in terms of less fatalities? So that's something else to consider. Okay, so let's look at that for a sec. So if it were intentional, that's what we might see. We might see, as part of a cover-up, China would also experience the novel coronavirus. They would suffer, their economy would suffer, but they'd bounce back a bit quicker. Their experience wouldn't be quite as bad as others. And those closely aligned with them might have the same experience. Those not aligned with them would potentially have a far worse experience, such as the United States, which is how things have played out. Now, if it were intentional, what is the end game? Is it as simple as the novel coronavirus, which is not by any means simple, but it appears very clear that that's not going to destroy the world or humanity? We are going to beat this. This is what I'm starting to wonder. Is there a phase 2? And if there is a phase 2, and this is the what if part, now I'm venturing off into the who knows, what if, just a thought. Please follow me on this thought and make your own conclusions. What if phase 2 is another type of virus? It's a novel coronavirus version 2.0. That's not a biological virus, but it is a computer virus, a virus that spreads via email, via the internet, via streaming, via networks, and it ends up infecting all devices, computers, cell phones, even advanced computers used on airlines, for example, government systems. Now, the perfect time to launch such a virus, the perfect time would be when everybody in the world is basically on states of lockdown, where in any case, whether they're working from home, whether they're at home not working, everybody's using computers and the internet probably more than they ever have in their lifetimes, whether it be cell phones, computers, streaming on smart TVs, etc. Internet usage and streaming and computer usage is just way up. Overwhelming social media platforms and just about all platforms you can imagine, teleconferencing platforms, everything based on the internet is just completely overloaded at this stage, it seems. So the perfect time to launch a very advanced, stealth-based, computer-based virus would be in the middle of a pandemic. So what if, in the midst of all of this, China, for the sake of conversation, this is a theory that I'm proposing, not one that I'm necessarily believing in myself, just discussion-based. What if China, meanwhile, while everyone's at home, locked down using computers, has released an advanced level virus that has managed to make its way throughout the world, throughout virtually all devices, and at the perfect time when everybody's at peak usage of the internet and of computers? And what if, just like the novel coronavirus, you don't see the symptoms for a period of time, whether it be weeks or months, we don't know, and meanwhile, while there's no symptoms of the novel coronavirus in people for a few weeks, let's say that there's no symptoms of the virus on computers, they go undetected by all the major antiviral software around the world, including government-based systems. What if it goes undetected? And because of that, it spreads just like the novel coronavirus has, globally, everywhere, to everyone. And suddenly, at a certain point, just when we think that we've kind of beat the novel coronavirus and things are okay, there's a mass, widespread disruption of the internet and computers, personally, business-related, and on a government basis as well. That would be absolutely devastating. China would, along the same lines as we talked about with the novel coronavirus, need to also experience disruption, also experience some type of struggling through it and financial suffering and etc. But they wouldn't experience it quite as bad as the rest of the world. Those more closely aligned with China would also experience this virus problem, computer virus problem, but not as bad as the rest of the world. Those most not aligned with China, such as America, for example, would experience it far worse, far worse than China. So that is just for the sake of discussion, a thought that I had. If there's a parallel virus that is a computer-based virus that is spreading around the world right now, and what got me thinking about that, I'm a heavy user of electronic devices and the internet and streaming, and I have noticed very peculiar behavior of my devices, most recently including my iPhone, which it's never done before, and my computer, which is a Mac, which it's never done before, freezing in strange ways, hanging in strange ways, behaving in strange ways. I use very advanced antiviral software, the best available on the market, really, in my opinion. And with all of that, there are just strange things happening with computers and cell phones lately. I've talked to others that have had similar experiences. Now, whether or not it's China, whether or not this is at all real, all I want to do is put this out there for the sake of being open about a thought that I've had. Is this, in fact, if the virus was released intentionally right around Chinese New Year to make some type of a statement, was it a one-punch play, or is there another punch that is yet to come that could be just as bad, if not worse? Because if we were to lose access to cell phones and to computers for a period of time, it would really bring the world to its knees at the worst time possible as we just begin to recover. So that is the conspiracy theory edition of the Night Watch. Please remember, I am not telling you that this is factual. Please don't claim this is fake news, because it really is not news. It's simply a thought. Is it my opinion? Not yet. At this point, it's just a thought that I'm exploring and considering and watching. And I think it's important that all of us have the ability to express our freedom of speech and opinion and put it out there and let others analyze it and think about it and see what conclusions we all come up with, and watch what happens next and evaluate things carefully and think for ourselves. So this is not something presented as if it's facts or as if it's news. This is not news. This is simply a discussion. It's simply an idea, and it's one that I haven't completely bought into myself by any means, but everything's suspicious, and I don't really believe in coincidences of a global magnitude, such as what happened with novel coronavirus kicking off in Wuhan, China, right essentially at the time of the Chinese New Year. It's hard to buy into that being a coincidence. Accidental is hard to imagine based on the timing. I think we're more looking at sabotage or intentional, just in my opinion only. And among those two, sabotage possible, but what if it's intentional? If so, there must be a phase two, and phase two is one that I would fear, and phase two may involve everything that we use in terms of computers, streaming, internet, and it could be quite devastating. I hope I'm wrong, and this isn't necessarily even a theory, as I've mentioned. So let's see how things play out. Everybody, please think about this on your own. Come up with your own ideas. Share them. Post any comments. I'd love to reply to them. Thank you very much for joining the Night Watch Show. Stay safe. Stay well. See you next time.